My name is Grzegorz Gwiazda. I'm a professor of sculpture and a sculptor, maybe more the sculptor or on the same level. No? And currently I'm staying in the northeast of Poland. The last years were pretty busy and I was moving quite a lot. This year I was staying in Barcelona Academy of Art, where I was teaching and working on a project with Jordi Diaz-Salama, the director of the Academy. In Barcelona, we were working on the project of Dante. The last years I was staying in Warsaw, where I'm a professor in the University of Education in the Department of Art Education. And I have a small studio also in Warsaw.
Where did you study, and when and how did you discover your passion for art, and then specifically for sculpture as a language?
I wanted to be a painter, as most of the people that are doing art at the beginning when I was a kid. But I was doing a art high school here nearby in the northeast of Poland, and where we were doing all sorts of arts like sculpture, painting, drawing, graphic, ceramics. I was doing the specialization of ceramics, but pretty soon I discovered that sculpture is something much more natural for me than painting, because in painting I was grabbing the concepts and ideas that I was seeing around, and I was able to adapt it in my work. But I realized that in sculpture I'm creating my own ways, and it's more natural for me. So more or less when I was 18, I already was sure that it's going to be my way. My teacher in the high school that said, it was a different country by this time, and she said something like, look guys, there is a problem of unemployment in the country, so whatever you're going to study, it's going to be problematic for you. So choosing a studies that you're going to suffer, it's double mistake. I found it quite logical explanation. Then my trip started. I moved to Poznan, to south of Poland, to the art university in Poznan. Then I moved, after 1 year, I moved to Warsaw. I graduated Warsaw, but in the middle, I made a small break for Erasmus in Brera, in Milan, and I returned to finish my education in Warsaw. I did my master there. After a few years, I did a PhD in Warsaw as well. And now, just the last year, I did my post PhD degree in Krakow, in the south of Poland. A PhD in art, specialization in art.
What is your research in your sculpture, and in a conceptual and a technical aspect?
In the past, I was very much into the problem of coexistence, tragic and comic elements inside one piece, like it happens in Shakespeare's plays, or another example is Charlie Chaplin, where you see this Trump that you feel compassion for and you laugh at, and the smooth transition between the tragic and comic elements was very stimulating for me. But then I discovered that the problem is much wider, and this coexistence of contradictions can be found on many fields. And then I started to realize that we as a human beings, the best way to describe ourselves is paradox, because we combine inside so many contradictions, but they create a unity. When we are alone, we miss our friends. When we are in the group, we want to be alone. It's just the simplest example of how complicated we are. So if the simplest conclusion was, if we are defined by paradox, then why not use this concept for creating art and sculpture? So I decided not to divide art for abstract and figurative, for the unity to switch between, to combine, to play with it. But in the end, I discovered, or I came to the conclusion that art is a specific kind of language that is using an abstract words, let's say. Because if I'm creating a group of forms that are creating one shape that reminds me a figure, it's not a figure. This is a group of forms that reminds me a figure, and only because of my our specific symbolic possibilities that we are able to go out of the object that we see, and we are able to recall something else when we are seeing one object, like for instance a wooden figure or a bronze head. We don't say a sculpture of a head, we say head, or this our tendency of seeing in a symbolic way makes this difficulty to realize that all art is abstract in the very basic, very deep, on a very deep level. So for me, there is no problem of choosing abstract or figurative, because for me it's just one unity, although it seems contradictory.
I find this extremely interesting and deep, and I wonder how it's for you in a much more concrete and technical process. How do you translate that into materials, and if the materials used are part of that paradox? I mean, if you describe that paradox also with the materials, or you have a specific material, and then what is your process in a technical way in order to, once you have the concept defined, how do you translate it into a piece of art?
I'm trying not to use one solution for many problems, because I believe the art is exactly opposite. I believe that art is to find many solutions for one problem, and to show many points of view for the same issue. And that's why art is so stimulating, because it's taking us out from the routine, from the typical for us point of view, from the comfortable way of seeing things. So I guess it's impossible to give this a simple answer for this question, because I believe that every problem demands a different technique, different solutions. Therefore, my technique is to look for the technique to represent in the best way the problem I'm struggling with. Then sometimes I'm taking one problem a few times, or I'm rebuilding one sculpture, changing the composition, adding elements or reducing elements to find what is the most efficient way of transmit my idea of the thing, or the way I see it, or I don't know, touch the viewer. So I'm unfortunately I cannot say clearly, in a clear way, what is the process of my work. If I would have to say something, I would say that I have a general idea in my mind about the problem, about the general idea about the composition, and then starts the work, and later the problems of material, the final material, the problems of the color are coming in the process of work on it.
You have touched the viewer. So what is your aim? What would you like to convey to the viewer? What is that you want to offer the viewer when they are in front of one of your pieces?
Well, again, this is I guess this is the second part of the previous answer. Depending on what was the problem that I touched, or that I was trying to work with. Sometimes is confusion, sometimes is the sensation of the beauty, sometimes is the feeling of being lost in the chaotic universe. Because actually, what I believe is the piece is one complex universe that is presented to, is revealed to us. That in the relation with the object of art, we are like we may feel like a god, if there was one, or if there is one, because everything is revealed for us. When we are in the everyday's world life, we see just a little particle of the infinite universe. But when we are spending time with one painting or one sculpture, we see the object all together, with all its composition, with all its the idea that it's encoded inside. Therefore, we are able to grab all the complexity of this object that sometimes give us the feeling, the sensation of the harmony, harmony of the world, harmonia mundi, or the opposite. So sometimes give us the sensation of that the world is, as I said, chaotic. Sometimes that is chaos or cosmos. No? If we see the painting of woman that is putting the milk of Vermeer, the objects that are surrounding her, they seems to be casual. No? But the longer we look at the painting, the longer we have feeling that everything is exactly in the place it should be. It's no longer the simple daily activity. It becomes a holy moment when nothing can be touched and nothing can be changed. For instance, for me, it makes me feel that the world it is the way it should be, and it's so hard to disconnect from this painting and return to real world, because then we don't see this harmony anymore, because the world is much more complex. We don't see the harmony of the world because we are just a little particle of it. We are particle of it that would love to think that is a whole piece.
As artists, we have this drive to create something, and when we are really connected to it, we are giving words or shape or form to a much more a larger voice that is in our subconscious, and it's in the subconscious of society. So in a way, we are connecting the words of what it's inside of us. So do you think, I don't want to get too much into politics and ideologies. I'm thinking more in a pure way of the function of the artist in society. Do you think there is some sort of function, not taken as a political party or an ideology, but the function of arts in society?
Yes, it's one of the problems that I'm considering constantly. Actually, in the beginning, I was asking myself if art has its place in the world nowadays at all, because does it play just the role of decorative element in our houses, or does it have any deeper meaning? I guess this is the problem that we are facing here. Is it just a nice thing that is to entertain or to kill the time, or is something more with it? And so well, I don't want to be I don't want to put our ego too high with my answer, because I believe it's not the role that one artist or the other artist can play. But when I was struggling with this problem of the position of art in the world, in some point I found on the internet one sculpture of sculpture. We don't know if it's sculpture actually, of one object that was found in Morocco, I guess. And the scientist says that it's from 150,000 years ago to I don't want to give any numbers because it already sounds very risky. But they so they are not sure if this object that is divided very symmetrically, like is one stone with something like a little relief of the cross in the middle that little bit reminds the figure of the human, of a person by this obvious symmetry of a human figure. But it could be also a kind of the tool that we don't know how to use anymore. We don't know what it was, but this object made me think about the first pieces of art of the first person who ever did art, a piece of art. Let's imagine it was this stone, this piece of stone. So what happened in this moment? Because this first archetype action give us the completely different point of view on the problem of the problem of art, which role art plays in the world, in our world. So in the moment when this humanoid took this piece of infinite world and saw in this piece of stone himself or his wife or other person, and he decided that this piece of the infinite world is something separated and finished object, and through which he could see other people. I believe it's the spring of our civilization and the modern thinking. So what happened in this moment is the protagonist was born, was chosen, not born. And when the protagonist is chosen, the composition appears, because well, we need also the problem of division and cutting off one element to see the unity of it. So we can see all composition or all the conclusion of the object. I believe what happened in this archetype moment was that this humanoid, he understood that there is infinite world, and I am with this object, he divided from this world, because he understood that like a child, like a baby needs one object, I don't know, teddy bear, to forget for a moment about his mother, that he doesn't see the difference between the mother and himself. But when he has a teddy bear for a moment, he's something different than his mom, because he's focused on something else. So maybe in this moment we have divided from the nature, and we started to create a culture with all the tools that evolution probably already gave us, like the sense of symbolic seeing that I mentioned before, or the understanding of our mortality that suddenly make us look for the meaning, because mortality without meaning is a concept that we cannot hold. I believe that art provided us the sense of composition and meaning, together with religion that comes probably from the same source, and all together they build the foundation of our culture that we are living in now, that we are recreating constantly, and we are being created by this culture, and at the same time we are creating it. So as I said in the beginning, I don't want to push our ego too high, because most of us will not affect the reality as much as we would like. But just knowing that we are repeating the same process that created our civilization brings the dignity back to the process that we are doing. It's not only the fight for our ambition and showing how good we are, is something much more important. We are creating this culture, and it's a responsibility.
What I get also from what you're saying is that in somehow art is a testimonial of the existence of human beings in this world. I find that is in a way, the role of the artist is telling the story, telling our story while we are alive, because we won't be forever.
Obviously, it's another way of extending our existence by transmitting the informations. That is also another achievement of our culture.
We have a beautiful interview, meaningful and powerful. And what I love of it is that it's not based on only on techniques and just practical aspect. But
I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in it at all. Actually, the technique is just the manifestation of the problem, not the problem. I think.